Good afternoon. A little bit late this afternoon because quite a busy day. We still have concreting going on down below, and also had some visitors. But some questions have come in, so this is a time we've set aside for Q&A. So I'll try to answer. Oh, the print is very small. So the first question is from Singapore. Dear Luang Por, thanks so much for explaining clearly the ways to work towards having a heavenly rebirth. May I hear from you or your views about what you think about the human realm these days? As recently I heard from one of the Ajahns sharing that the human realm is degenerating as humans aren't keeping many precepts and sila these days. I do agree with him. Therefore, it might be challenging to cultivate in human realm in the future. Perhaps aspiring for a heavenly rebirth might be ideal. Personally, I do hope to attain to Nibbana in this very life if possible. However, if it's not possible, I'm wondering, should I aspire to be reborn as a human or in heaven, preferably a Sotapanna, the next life? Am I understanding correctly that if I am reborn as a human Sotapanna for the next 7 lives, I will sure to be able to attain to the bliss of Nibbana? For instance, if I can live till 80 years of age, and I multiply by 70 lifetime, that is equivalent to 560 years to attain Nibbana. How does it work, this lifetime thing? If one is reborn in the heavenly realm, back to human and back and forth, etc. I do see some attachment that I am clinging on to the different realms to go to by asking these questions. Or perhaps I should not think so much on it and work on keeping my precepts and be heedful to work on my hiri and ottappa. Thanks so much for your patience in reading this long message here. Thanks again for guidance and time. Well, perhaps you are getting a little bit caught up in proliferation about the future and realms, heaven, human, numbers. Do you think? Can you really be sure it'll be 7 times 80? 80 years per life, 7 lifetimes. It could be 1 lifetime. We have Sotapanna Ehipichi, who is the practitioner who attains in Sotapanna, then attains Nibbana in 1 lifetime, this very lifetime. Why not aim for that? Whether you achieve it or not, how fast, how slow, that will depend on the different causes and conditions, such as how much effort you put in, how much karma comes up, how well you deal with it. But at least aim for Nibbana in the here and now, because I think that's the way the Buddha taught. If you want to end suffering, you have to end it in the present moment by recognizing where you're attaching and letting go. Letting go of attachment is not something you do next life or in the future. You have to do it right here, right now, by bringing up awareness, recognizing where you're clinging, where you're going wrong in your thinking, where you're harming yourself, harming others in your thinking, and then your actions, and change that. And you have to make that change in the present moment, right here, right now. So this is why we encourage you to develop mindfulness through meditation, through practice, cultivating it in the present moment so you can know yourself right here, right now. You can know if you're caught into stressful thinking, worries, greed, anger, delusion, doubt, and so on, and you can fix that right here, right now. The future is uncertain, it's unknown. If you're someone who likes to go according to statistics, the Buddha said statistically more people are reborn in the lower realms than in the higher realms after they die. Unfortunately, they haven't made strong good karma, so many people are not born in the heaven realms. So if you're sort of gambling on where you're going to be born next life, maybe it's not such a good wager, not such a good gamble, because you can't, statistically, you maybe are not, the statistics are not in your favour, and you may end up being born as a kangaroo or in ghost realm or hell realm or something. Better to work on this life, just cultivating the path, sila, samadhi, panya, right here, right now, every day. This is the cause for the good results to come. You want to attain sotapanna, this is the cause for attaining stream entry. Listening to the Dhamma and putting that Dhamma into practice. Keeping the precepts, abandoning the intention to break the precepts. Cultivating mindfulness, clear comprehension, effort. Developing insight into the impermanent nature of the five khandhas. And just keep doing that over and over again. And how fast or slow the results come, well, just accept you can't be sure how things will go, but as long as you're creating the right causes and putting effort into that, that's as much as you can do. So Ajahn Chah used to compare it to growing the tree. You can't force a tree to grow any faster than it will grow according to nature. Your job is to water it, protect it, get the sun on it, fertilize it, and then you allow it to grow. And some trees grow fast. If it gets more sun, more fertilizer, more water, then it may grow fast. If the earth is in good quality earth, it may grow faster. But you can't force these things. In terms of good soil, what is the best soil? Well, the Buddha said the Sangha is a field of merit, meaning it's the best soil to plant your seeds of good karma is with the Sangha. So making offerings to support Sangha, associating with the Sangha because of their good sila, listening to the Dhamma from Sangha, practicing with the Sangha in one way or another. This is a field of merit. This is going to be the best soil to nourish your spiritual tree. Doesn't mean to say you can't practice without associating with the Sangha, but it's going to be much more difficult. Who we associate with, who we listen to the teachings from in life will have a huge influence on our practice and how our mind progresses. We want to listen to the good Dhamma from people who keep a very good standard of sila, who are committed to the practice. And generally it's Sangha who are committed to the practice because they've literally gone forth from the home life into the homeless life to practice the Dhamma. So that's why they're a field of merit. If you associate with the Sangha, you'll get so many very good things happening. It has such a good impact on your mind on many levels, on subtle levels, on obvious levels, that it's probably the fast track to Nibbana, I would say. If you meet good teachers, you listen to them, spend time with them, see their good example, you'll get the best external causes for the practice, and then, of course, the next part is your own internal effort, which you have to make. But generally, you make more effort when you associate with good Sangha. So, if you set your heart on Nibbana, if you haven't reached Nibbana, well, you may achieve heavenly rebirth if you're practicing well. or you may come back as a human. But I wouldn't worry too much about that. I would focus actually on the causes and conditions for Nibbana, which is the cultivation of the Noble Eightfold Path. So practice, do your meditation every day, listen to the Dhamma regularly, keep the precepts every day, practice dana regularly. Nourish your mind with all these good practices, and then good things will come of that. Next question is from Singapore. If one was not able to ordain as a monk during one's youth due to financial and care obligations of one's parents and disabled sibling, and now is way past 50 years of age, what options are available for such a person once these duties are completed in due course, assuming one is still alive? Could one be an anagarika or something similar? Thank you for your Dhamma wisdom and teachings. Yes, one could be anagarika or similar, and one could possibly even ordain. I know some monasteries and teachers won't accept candidates over the age of 50. They have a sort of a rule cut off because over 50 you tend to have more health issues and your body's weaker, so maybe it's tougher to live the monk life. But there are those places that will accept people over 50. Maybe you have to find one. Get to know a teacher. Like if you get to know a teacher in a sangha, they may sympathize with you, and even if you're over 50, they may still help you and provide ordination. So, there's like stories of, Rata the Brahmin in the time of the Buddha, who was this old guy who'd been hanging around the monastery for a long time, kind of an anagarika, and doing a bit of weeding and trying to make himself useful, but he was kind of old, and the way the world is, often we like to neglect older people or ignore them, overlook them. So he was neglected and overlooked, but he actually had the aspiration always to become a monk. He never quite got up the strength to ask. And then one day he asked, and nobody wanted to ordain him because he was older, an older man. And they all thought, this guy, no good. So no one would ordain him. So the Buddha had a meeting and he said, is anyone willing to ordain Radha the Brahmin? And Venerable Sariputta, whose one of his leading qualities was gratitude and appreciation for people who had helped him in the past. He thought about it and he realized no one else would agree to ordain this old man. So he said, I'll do it. Because I remember once upon a time, this Brahmin had offered me a spoonful of rice on my alms round. So out of gratitude, I want to give something back to him. I'll give him ordination and train him. So he ordained. He was very happy and progressed well in his Dhamma. Even in the time of Luang Por Man, a few of his disciples were older men, 50 years or older, who had associated with monks all their life, had faith, had a job, maybe had a family, earned money, but they had strong faith, and like you in your description here, they had fulfilled their duties towards their family, made their money, done their work, brought up their kids, so they were free in that sense. And then they came forth to request ordination. And because they had strong faith in Luang Por Man, and they'd made a commitment and supported monks over many years, Luang Por Man arranged for their ordination. And he said sometimes the old guys practice better than the young guys, because the young guys are full of hormones and they have all their attachments and lust and doubts about the world and get distracted by things. Sometimes the older guys have actually seen the world and they know what the world is like, and they have no more doubts about the world, and they're a bit tired of the world, so they're ready to commit to the Dhamma. So there's a few cases, a few people are like that, and they actually became enlightened starting their monk's life at the age of 50 or so. So it's certainly not an absolute obstacle if you're older, but you may have to make allowances and, put up with a lot, because when you're older and you come into the Sangha, you have to train in the Vinaya. And when you're older, you often don't like to train. So unfortunately, old people have a reputation for being a bit stubborn in their ways. Because if you've lived in the world for 50 years, 60 years, whatever, then you've built up all kinds of habits and attachments. And maybe you're not willing to let them go, maybe. So you have to work harder with that, work harder to let go of your pride, your conceit, your stubbornness. Because sometimes when you're 50, 60 years old, you feel like you know everything, even though you may, in terms of Dhamma, you may not know everything, but you feel like you know everything, and then you pass that on. If you try training in a monastery, you might keep reacting with this sense, I know, and you get annoyed when some younger monk tells you something that you didn't know, because you don't know all the rules, or you don't know some aspect of Dhamma. Someone younger than you tells you, you might get upset, and the pride is hurt, the ego comes up. So the main danger or obstacle for an older person is, one is health, physical health, that can be limiting, and the second is pride and ego. So in Thailand they call the older monk the granddad monk. And when you're a young monk in Thailand, they always tell you, don't go teaching the granddad monks. Because granddad monks may not like it. When you're a young monk, you're what we call a whippersnapper. You're a whippersnapper telling this old guy what to do. They may not like it. So that's an obstacle, but it's not an insurmountable obstacle. If you're really focused and committed on the Dhamma, you can let go of your pride, your conceit. You can listen, you can learn, but you have to humble yourself to that. And you have to ask yourself, am I ready to do that? Like if you're 50 or 60 years old, you may have earned a living, built up a family, you may have built a house or own a house. You've done all this stuff in the world and you've built it up. Then you have to let it go to come into the Sangha where you have nothing. You have your robe and your bowl. But you have in your mind the attachment, I have built up my life, I've built a house, I've had a job, I know this, I know that. That's quite a big ask to set that aside in the way you relate as a monk now, to learn to see kilesa and let go of kilesa. That's the challenge. But if you're humble enough, you're willing enough, you can do it. But you have to be humble. So age isn't an absolute obstacle, but you certainly have to work with it, be patient with it. Question from Malaysia, Lumpur. Thank you for your compassion for guiding and teaching us Dhamma. I am suffering from insomnia day and night for months. This experience drains me to mentally and physically become weak, causing the body system some disorder, seeking for your advice. Well, I guess you know what's been going on in your life. Is there a reason for the insomnia? Has there been some change or some event in your life? Sometimes it's just aging itself, changes in the body through aging. Sometimes it's a traumatic event or a life-changing event, so the death of a loved one, loss of a job or retirement from a job, something that's prompted anxiety, because anxiety is a big reason we suffer from insomnia. You're thinking too much, so you can't go to sleep, and often when you can't get enough sleep, you worry that you haven't got enough sleep, so that adds to the problem. You worry you can't sleep, and then you worry that you can't sleep, so it gets worse and worse. So sometimes it's worth thinking through trying to find out what the cause is. Because if you can know what the cause is, if there is a specific cause, then it may help you in seeing what you can do to address the cause. Generally speaking, I would say practice more metta meditation. Metta, goodwill for yourself and then for others. Because metta, when practiced and developed regularly, will relax the mind, calm the mind, and that also calms the body, calms the nervous system, the sort of things that anxiety stimulates that makes you unable to sleep. That will be calmed by the practice of metta. So, maybe before you go to sleep at night, sit and do a metta meditation, developing the thought and the feeling of loving kindness, compassion for yourself. Spread it all around your body consciously, up to your head. Relax your head so you don't have a headache, so your nerves in your head and your brain and your eyes aren't all stirred up, and then around your body, and then out to all beings. And the Buddha said if you share merit with all beings, including those you can't see, so devas and ghosts, well, this has a very good effect, helps you to relax. And the devas, the angels, will look after you when you sleep, so you can rest well. There's nothing you need to worry about. So practice a lot of metta, and obviously in daily life as well, cultivate goodwill towards the people around you, with yourself. Even if you have been through some hard times, had some illness or some trauma in your life, practice a lot of metta, compassion for yourself and for others. This tends to make us relax, which may help us sleep more. If you have a more relaxed attitude to the whole thing, then even if you can't sleep, we'll just try and find something useful to do while you can't sleep. So one obvious thing is just do a bit more meditation while you can't sleep. Or listen to some Dhamma. It's a bit kind of mischievous, you might say, but some people, they find listening to the Dhamma puts them to sleep. So then they can't sleep at night, so they turn the Dhamma on and they fall asleep. So you could try listening to Dhamma to help you sleep. You could try meditating, say on the breathing, counting the breath or reciting Buddho as you're lying there, unable to sleep. Just go to the breath, and if you can't sleep, fine, you can practice more meditation, practice mindfulness. You can even try doing other things, do some walking meditation and so on. If you can't sleep, just do something useful until you feel more tired, and then try sleeping again. So there's a few things you can do with this, and try to be patient with the situation, because when we're impatient we worry, and that only makes it worse. So practice the loving kindness, try to do something useful, like listening to Dhamma, for example, or reading Dhamma, and then try to relax physically, mentally, so you can sleep when you're tired. But if you're not sleepy yet, well, don't worry about it, don't make it worse by getting upset or anxious about it. But don't be like the monk who couldn't sleep, who I knew, who did the one of reading Dhamma before he went to sleep. And this was in the old days when he had to read by candlelight. And he was lying there with a book. He was like reading with the book over him like that, by candlelight, and the candle was right by him. And in those days we used to sleep with a mosquito net over us, because there's a lot of mosquitoes. And sometimes the wind blows and the mosquito net moves, and this monk was reading his book until he became sleepy, and then it just came down on his face, and he fell asleep with the book covering his face. So he couldn't see anything. The candle was still alight, and the mosquito netting was blowing in the wind, and it blew onto the candle, and he woke up in the middle of the night in a ball of fire. And I was camping about 50 meters away in the forest, and I was woken by the sound of this monk going, ow, ow, ooh, ow, ow. And his whole mosquito net and his little tent frame, it all burnt up, fell on him. Luckily he wasn't seriously hurt. I came round to see him, and all that was left was the little hook that his mosquito net was attached to, the mosquito net, and everything else was burnt up. So if you go to sleep reading, be careful, put the book down, and if you have a candle, blow the candle out first. Next question. Dear Lumpur, this is also from the same person in Malaysia. Psychology lessons have become wildly applied in combination with Buddhist teachings, like some researcher quotes. What is your point of view? Thank you. Well, research into things, it can be useful, can't it? It's just giving us information, and I guess nowadays there's more interest and study of different branches of science, including psychology, so we have statistics on all kinds of things, and sometimes Buddhist monks or people who quote them. But again, they're just a general guideline of the way things are and pointing to truth, but they're not absolute truth yet. I mean, with every statistic, there's always, something that doesn't quite fit with the statistics. There's always the anomaly and the sort of the person or the situation that doesn't quite fit. And maybe you're that one person, or you're in that situation that doesn't fit with the norm. So it's not an absolute guideline, is it? It's just information sharing that may be useful, maybe not. You have to reflect on it. Sometimes it's useful. So like, quite a lot of people seem to have a fear of flying, and then they come to me and they say, oh, I got this fear of flying, what can I do? Because I want to go and visit home or visit some country that's overseas and I need to fly. What shall I do? And I say, well, do you know statistically very few people are caught into air crashes. They're actually very rare. It's actually quite a safe way of travel, whereas you arrived in the monastery in a car. Statistically, there's a much higher chance of you being hurt driving your car along the road than sitting in an aeroplane. Sometimes it just gives you perspective, doesn't it? You hear some statistics and some research, and it may just help make you look differently or think differently about a problem you're suffering from or caught into. Some statistics you take with a pinch of salt. Sometimes they seem quite meaningful and useful. So, Ajahn Chah used to have a statistic. He'd say, look at other people 10% of the time, look at yourself 90% of the time. Because he said most people get it wrong. They're looking at other people 90% of the time and looking at themselves 10% of the time. So they miss everything because they're only looking at themselves 10% of the time. That means they're only 10% mindful and aware of what they're saying, what they're thinking, what they're doing. So of course they get stressed and make mistakes, and all kinds of things happen that don't go well in their life because they're not seeing what they're doing. And they fill their head full of opinions and views about other people and gossip and opinions because they're spending all their time thinking and looking at other people. So you have to learn to change that around. So this is, say, when you come on retreat, isn't it? You're letting go of all this concern about other people. You might say we have too much concern about other people and not enough concern about ourselves. So when you're on retreat, you're meditating, sitting, walking, contemplating Dhamma, keeping precepts. This is all about training yourself. And it does have a good effect on other people, but you don't need to think about other people. You don't need to look at them, think about them. You let them go, and you're focusing in on your own body and mind so that you can understand it better. Whereas normally, you go about your business, you're working, you've got family, social things. It's all about other people and what they're doing, and that stirs us up, doesn't it? We compete, we compare. Somebody's better than us, somebody's worse than us. We have all our views and opinions and beliefs, and it's quite a lot of suffering in that. So I've always found that quite a good sort of statistical analysis, and I'm not sure Ajahn Chah actually did it as a sort of research project. He's just giving a general teaching, isn't it? That we generally look too much at other people and not enough at ourselves. We're not mindful enough about ourselves. So that's quite a useful teaching. So sometimes research on other people and things in this world can be useful. But number one is learn from yourself, learn from your own experience, and this will, particularly, you're applying the Four Noble Truths. You need to know body and mind, what you're thinking, what you're saying, what you're doing, more and more, so that you can know what is wholesome and cultivate that, what is unwholesome and abandon that, and so you can see the three characteristics of experience, to see thoughts as impermanent. They arise, they pass away, they're conditioned. You need to see yourself and see your mind to know that. Otherwise, we're always working on this sort of superficial level of experience, just what we believe about things, what we think may be right, our opinion, our view, our belief. And that may or not be correct. And our beliefs and opinions are easily influenced by other people and things that go on that we don't really know. We're just picking stuff up, aren't we? And we form an opinion very easily. Somebody says something, they say, "You're really good," and you might believe it. "Oh, I'm really good." Or they say, "You're really bad." "Oh, I'm really bad," and you feel depressed. That's just other people's words. You also have to look and know for yourself, don't you? So number one is study yourself, get to know yourself. Atahi atano nato. One has to learn to be a refuge to oneself. Next question from Singapore. Dear Lumpur, may I know if it's possible to take some small meals around 7 a.m., 9 a.m., 11 a.m., before noon for the cultivation of the 8 precepts? Or is it only one meal before noon? That's up to you. It's not specified, is it? So you could be a 3 meal a day person still keeping the 8 precepts, and you have 3 small meals. I think it would be a struggle to have 3 big meals before noon if you're walking around like a balloon. But 3 small meals, a few people find it's healthier, and they have issues with digestion and so on, that they do actually have to do that. Take 2 or 3 small meals before noon. They still want to keep 8 precepts, or even monks who keep them monk vinaya, and they just have 2 or 3 small meals. So it's up to you. You have to see what works for you health-wise, and that may depend on age, background, whether you have any illnesses and so on. But if you're keen to keep the 8 precepts, that's what you've got to consider. The 1 meal thing is a Tudonga wata. Tudonga means it's one of these 13 ascetic practices that monks may or may not take up. They're not compulsory for all monks. They're special practices, ascetic practices monks may take on to train themselves to simplify things and to reduce attachments and let go of certain kilesas, such as greed. So eating 1 meal a day in 1 vessel in a bowl is one of these Dhutonga practices, and many forest monks like Ajahn Chah practice that, or certainly they practiced it for many years in their earlier years. But it's not essential to do that to keep the 8 precepts, but just to know, well, this is a Dhutonga practice, a special ascetic practice that you may take on. It may have some value for you, or you may not, and that's okay. You may have 2 meals. It's a very standard thing. You have a breakfast just after dawn and then a main meal later before noon. That's a very common practice for 8 preceptors. You have to think it through, what will work for you health-wise, energy-wise. The last question from Malaysia. Suki Hontu Lumpur. I am a housewife. I have a picky husband who always comments on food or the way things are done. He always asks, why not this? And why don't you improve your skill by doing more research? After a long time, I have fear and many uncertainty of preparing food or completing certain tasks for him. How do I overcome this? Well, if it's been going on a long time, it sounds like it's time to let go. You can't please someone forever. So you have to find your limit, what's reasonable within your relationship. You know, I don't know you and your relationship, but if it's become a habit, maybe somebody is very fussy and they're always telling you what to do year after year, then you may have got into a habit of just always complying and running around. And as you get older, it gets quite tiring to try and please someone, and they may even get worse. So you have to sit down sometimes and consider what's the right level here, what's the right amount. It's not for me to give you an answer there. I think you have to consider for yourself. But you know, as we get older, sometimes we have to make changes in our life. So maybe you have to talk to your husband and say, look, I can't keep running around trying to please you on every aspect of everything, maybe, because it's too much, maybe. I'm not saying it is or it isn't. You have to think about that and maybe talk to him if you can, approach the subject. Or sometimes you just do what you feel is appropriate in the relationship, how much you want to help the partner and assist. And then after you've done what you feel is appropriate, you let go. And they have to look after themselves as well and play their part. So you have to consider what is the right amount for you, what's reasonable. Because you also have to practice for yourself and develop your own practice. And you can't spend all your time trying to please another person. Because if they're coming from a place of defilement, controlling, and they're trying to coerce you all the time, you know, really there's no pleasing them. There'll never be an end to it, will there? So this is why you have to consider what's the right amount, the reasonable amount. You don't want to hurt them, obviously, but simply not following every demand is not necessarily hurting. Your intention is simply to protect yourself in a difficult situation and do a reasonable amount of help and service, and you know, you have to sit down and weigh it up. What are they doing for you anyway? I don't know the situation, so I can't really comment, but what are they doing for you? Are they doing anything for you? Is it all one-sided? Are you running around just doing things for them? That doesn't sound very fair to me. The way it works in a monastery is we try to share duties, responsibilities. So one good way of doing that is we move things around. So everyone does different chores for a period of time and then we swap over. So sometimes you're doing one thing, you know, you're cleaning one area of the monastery, you know, the toilets. Another time you're cleaning the dining room. Another time you're involved in assisting a senior monk. Another time you're running a live stream like this. You know, we have many different duties, responsibilities in the monastery, and we try and share them out. We also try to cover each other, so if someone is ill or away, well, someone else steps in. And if you move around like that, you get to learn many new things, and you can also pick up something that someone else is unable to do because you've done it before yourself. So it's not perfect, I know, but you try your best to share responsibility so no one is too burdened. That way everyone feels, you know, they're contributing, they're part of the team, and we can help each other. So it's a display of kindness, compassion. So perhaps it's a more pleasant way to live when you do that, when you consider each other and you try not to burden one person, making them do all the work and then you do nothing. And you notice in a monastery where people are training well, they often will do things, jobs that just need doing without being told. They just say, oh, this needs putting away or this needs doing, and they'll just do it. Monks will do that. without anyone having to say, oh, this is your job, you do this. So actually then there's much less sort of talking and bossing and being fussy going on. You know, it can still happen, but not so much when people are training properly. Things just get done. And the Buddha actually praised one monastery in the time of the Buddha. The monks would come back from their alms round. One monk sets out the water and the sitting mats, and one monk cleans this, and one monk does this. And it kind of goes almost like clockwork. Everyone knows what they have to do, and they just do it. Nobody has to be fussy or bossy. You just get the job done because it needs to be done. That's the ideal that you're working towards. And when you see it in practice, it's very beautiful. You know, people living together but without being fussy or annoying each other, always picking on each other and all that. So I know it's an ideal that is maybe it's hard to achieve sometimes, but that's what you're working towards. And the family has to be the same. I was just talking to one of the builders. He said the way he's bringing up his son is he's teaching his son to contribute to the family. He says he doesn't just give him pocket money all the time and give him games and phones and all these things. His son has to do some jobs around the house and he has to earn his pocket money. And I said, yeah, it sounds like a reasonable way to do it, so that his son learns personal responsibility. So mum, dads, children, you know, we can all contribute in our family situation. And so if someone is too fussy, too picky, maybe somebody needs to tell them to, you know, step in and do a bit more themselves, perhaps. I'm not saying it's easy. Some people, they don't want to be told, I know. But you see what you can do. So that's the end of this Q&A session.